well, who are you? And the way they phrased themselves were angelic beings of light, ascended masters who've once walked the earth's plains. So I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means. We would go into meditation together, and then he would just say to me, just look out the window. What do you see? What are you sensing? And then I came to discover that
Actually, what I'm seeing right now is like you chose all of those challenges so that you could work through the healing of those challenges so you Welcome to the Light the Day podcast, where we explore spiritually transformative experiences. I'm your host, Julie Cluff, and I just want to thank you for being here today. And once again, I'm going to remind you to like and subscribe and share this with your friends and family that will benefit from this conversation. And thank you. So many of you have commented, have liked, and I've really enjoyed reading your comments and having that interaction, so thank you for doing that. Today, I have a very special guest all the way from New Zealand, Mish Carpenter. Hi, Mish.
Hi, Julie. Thank you for having me here. It's such a beautiful honor. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, it's an honor for me to have you here. I'm super excited to dive into your story and your journey, your transformation and your experiences. So this will be a lot of fun. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we go back and figure out how you got here.
Gosh, I got you kicking and screaming. Let me just put that out there. It wasn't the easiest journey. But I am a South African, and I love sharing that because it's just so in me. And I am labeled, the labels that I give myself, and it doesn't define who I am, is a spiritual medium. I'm a channel. I, in the last 2 years, have recently started telepathically becoming a communicator for some of the non-autistic children, non-speaking autistic children. Um, and working with energy, I label an energy healer, yet I feel like we all are healers, and I know we all are healers. And for me, I'm just the bridge, and I facilitate, the facilitator of messages, and I walk with people on their journey, which for me is such an honor. It really, really is an honor when you see someone that has perhaps been in suffering, whether it be suffering of anxiety, suffering of pain, suffering of old wounds, old patterns, and you walk the journey with them, and they just become their truthful self, which is, for me, it's that essence of having joy. It's the essence of just having the knowing, but yet at the same time learning that we're here on this human platform, that we walk in this incredible journey of, sometimes it is painful, and sometimes it is it's hard. Like I say, I came kicking and screaming. My journey was, I can laugh about it now, but
Right.
it was a dive into my darkness, a dive into my, what we term, my shadow selves. Yeah.
Yeah, I can really appreciate that. I used to tell my friends I used to say, "I stood in the wrong line in heaven before I came here, and I picked up the wrong things. I don't know what I was thinking, but how do I get off this train?"
Yeah, I know. The word that comes to mind is like, how come I wasn't a trust fund baby? Like, just wondering, what did I do? What did I do in previous lifetimes? So I hear you. It
Are
makes
you
sense.
familiar, and I'm kind of squirreling off topic for a second here, but it just reminded me of this. Are you familiar with the musical Fiddler on the Roof?
No.
There's a musical, Fiddler on the Roof, that's been out for years and years. I grew up with the music, and one of the songs in that production is called "If I Were a Rich Man."
Oh,
And
yes,
so
I know
this
that song. Yes.
Yes, yes, "If I Were a Rich Man." Da 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 da. And he goes through, like, that whole thing, like, "If I was a rich man, I would do this, and I would do that." So anyway, I can really appreciate that. Well, let's go back. Who was Mish as a young child? Did you grow up in a spiritual home or a religious home, or what was your experience as a child?
We grew up in a Methodist home, not religious at all, yet I remember the vehicle coming to collect us for Sunday schools on the weekend. And then as I went into teenagehood, I don't even know how this kind of happened, but um, I don't know if my mom was in a Pentecostal church or I started getting involved in a Pentecostal church, but that's when I got really involved in diving into religion and realizing that, Jesus is around. And for a long time, I mocked it when I came out of it because, and I say what I mean by coming out of it is because I realized people are people. And I put everything on the pastor. I put everything on people within the church. And in one way, when I was a teenager, it was a lifesaver for me. I lost my best friend at 16 and a half. She had a kidney transplant. And I
Wow.
remember wanting to take my life, and I took tablets from the medicine cupboard, and I only took 6. Woke up the next morning very disappointed that I was still alive. But I feel that, well, actually, I know today that was very much part of my journey in terms of what's led me to where I am today and doing the work that I do today. But I'm very grateful because in some way, by praying, in some way, by, knowing that I could speak to Jesus, by having, for me, light language would be this as similar as talking in tongues. When I go back as a teenager, I'm like, I think we did the same thing. But at the same time, the energy of being in the church. I love the Pentecostal churches because they've got the live bands, they've got the singing, they've got the dancing. But I got caught up in the people and thinking that people were better than me.
Mm,
And um, it's just been an incredible journey of learning. Yet at the same time, the learning, when I look back into being a child, I obviously every child has this innocence about themselves, and I was always very joyful, but I used to speak truthfully, and my mom used to shut me down because I would say things, I would just blurt things out, and my mom would say, "How do you know that?" What those things were at the time. Like, let's say somebody was having an affair, but I was always an observer. And I would
mhm,
say, "Well, why are you sitting next to that auntie so and so when that's your wife," kind of thing, And my mom would say, "Shut up, Michelle, just shut up. How do you know that
mhm,
stuff?" And
mhm,
as I started to go into my adulthood, my mom actually was really psychic, but she stayed in the church. And because
mhm,
she would say to me, "Oh, did you see that? I saw something. I felt something." And I say, "Mom, what are you seeing?" And she'd say, "No, no, no, we can't talk about that stuff." So I feel that it's not a bad journey to come from. I feel that a lot of us just are seeking community. At the time, I was just in a community that I loved.
mhm.
We went to youth every Friday, but at the same time, it became an addiction. And for me,
Interesting.
that's not a good place to be, because I was looking for people. I was looking for my people, which I think in spirituality, a lot of us are searching for that too.
Mhm,
Who are community, and I'm of the opinion, um, this is a time where we can empower ourselves. It's about us. It's about us as individuals, but who do we bring in as a community, but without what I'm trying to say, and the visual that I get is like there's so much separation in these groups, whether we're religious, whether we're not religious, whether we come from a culture of some sorts, whether we're in and seeking spirituality. I think spirit all is within inside of us. Um, so I was a very jovial child. Um, and I smile because I've got a picture up of myself up on the wall here on the right-hand side that I look at where I was probably like 3 years old. And I just I look at her and I go, wow, there was, sure, children have such light. And I think sometimes we forget that that's who we truly are, is the light.
yes.
Um, and I can look at that little girl and just go, wow, she's walked a really tough journey, but she's smiling in this picture, and it's a black and white photo. And I often just look at her and go, say, thank you for walking the journey. gosh, I didn't know these tears were here. But they're tears of gratitude, Julie, tears of just like, wow. I think when we can look back
Yeah.
on our journeys and go, wow, look what our little children have gone through. Look what, we're sitting here as grown women and going, wow, this is so imperfect but perfect. Such a beautiful time to be alive.
Mhm.
So sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but gosh.
That's okay. I really appreciate what you're saying because I if we look back on just the human life in general, there's so many years where we're at effect of our circumstances, where we don't have a lot of control or ability to change things about our circumstances that we want to be able to change, and we're so much at effect, and then we spend our adulthood trying to then integrate those experiences where we didn't feel like we had any autonomy, any control, any say in how we were being treated and in what we were, um, involved with. It was like we were at effect
Yeah.
of the other adults in our life that, the old adage, I don't know if this is a familiar adage to you and your culture, but, is that, children should be heard and not seen and not heard.
Mm.
And that
Yes.
was an adage that was very prominent,
Yes.
for many years, and when I was born, it was still pretty alive, and I think it's still alive in some areas, um, but that is not always the best growth experience for the child.
No, and it's like you've shared everything that is how I grew up. I look at the room that I'm in, and we have two couches, and it brings me to how my mom used to say, "Come and sit here." We had to sit on the floor. We weren't allowed to sit on the chair. There's this continuous program that and the way I've been conditioned with exactly what you've shared is having to find my voice. Um, but
Mhm,
not in a defensive mechanism or a defensive tone, having to be okay with, s you know, if let's say I would go to somebody's home, I was taught, let everybody else go first. I was taught, so I've had to learn to go, actually, I also deserve to sit on the couch and not sit on the floor. I also deserve to, eat or go and stand in the queue first for food. It's taken a long, long time for me to work with that. So yeah, my voice was a big part of learning to speak openly and speak up and also just allow myself to cry the way that I just have without berating myself because I was shut down for most of my years as a little girl and as a teenager. Um, and I don't know if it was me just expressing, but I feel that emotional tears are really healthy. But when you're told, stop crying, stop crying, stop crying.
yeah.
And still to this day, I have people that will be like, oh gosh, Mish is crying again. And I'm like, well, I'm Cancerian, get over it. I'm a body of water. Um, that's my excuse.
I love that, that's awesome. Ah.
Well, we three Cancerians in our home. Okay. And one Scorpio. I mean, whew, that goes down well every full moon. So, um, but it's been a learning to actually, as I'm crying and looking at that picture, to just go, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. But I know that I still apologize for it every now and again. So you see, it's like those parts of ourselves that are still rebalancing, redefining who I am.
Well, and
Um,
even at the beginning when you were describing the work that you do and so forth, and you talked about, like, labels, right? It's language is so challenging
yeah,
because because to to call ourselves I also call myself a spiritual medium versus
Yeah.
a psychic medium because I feel more connected to that label or title, but is that who I am? No, that's a role that I play, but it's not who I am. And it's
Yes.
and language is just so challenging. And then also as women, there's a conditioning, like every aspect of who we are within a certain society plays a role in how we're conditioned.
Yeah.
It's where we were born, it's the families that we grew up in, it's the religions that we participated in, it's the schools that we went to, the teacher and every person is having a different experience, which is just wild to me. Honestly,
It's
it's still just wild to me.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
isn't it just amazing that we all have a different, unique thumbprint? I mean, that just blows my mind. It's exactly.
exactly.
It's all of the above, and
Yeah.
I love what you shared because it is a role. You know, as I shared with you before we started recording, that I'm coming from a chest infection, and one of my clients, I postponed, and she said to me, "Oh, I didn't think people like yourself get sick." And I was like, "Huh? Seriously?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And she said, and that's what I wanna I wanna take the myth out of that. I wanna take the myth out of, or the demystifying that actually just freaking hell, my windows also, sometimes my lines are blurred as well, and I argue with my husband, and my daughter, who's 22, is my truth speaker. She's like, "Mom, stop it, you're contradicting yourself." I'm like, "Yep, I am." And, you know, I just sometimes think if we had a camera, I'm just normal, like as
We're
normal as
all messy humans.
100%.
Yeah. So how
Exactly.
did you get from this place of and I'm sorry to hear about your friend, and I know you had some other
You.
really challenging hardships in childhood. And how did that propel you forward into the work that you're doing now? Like what was that journey?
Gosh, it's been an incredible journey of transformation and learning forgiveness. So I was born in Zimbabwe, which was Rhodesia at the time, and my parents were fairly young. My dad was in the army, he was in the war, and I happen to remember things as a young kid, whereas my older brother doesn't remember. He shut down a lot of the memories. I remember my mom's fear of locking us in her room, and we would sleep in her bed. And I remember the fighting that my parents would have. I remember you know, alcohol was such a big part of our growing up, and still to this day, I am having to, you know, hang on, I'm digressing. I'll come back. There was just a lot of what I held my breath for.
Mhm.
My parents denied a lot when I would ask them as an adult. I'm like, "But you guys fought, don't you remember?" I remember punching. I remember waking up to one of them punching the other, and they both denied it. You heard things, you know, that wasn't true. So my dad took the decision because Zimbabwe got to a stage where it was becoming really, really, really bad. And my dad went to South Africa. We had family in South Africa, and my parents literally started with 9 boxes.
Mm,
We caught a train, and I remember coming from a lot of poverty. My dad was the only one that worked. My mom was a very angry woman. She was shut down. But when I got to know the background of her mom, who was, I think, had either schizophrenia or bipolar, because she was in and out of psychiatric hospitals a lot of times on medication. At those years, they called them tranquilizers, whereas now
mhm.
I think they're antidepressants. Um, I was sexually abused at the age of 5 by my mother's brother. I didn't know that that was wrong until I was a teenager, or that there was anything bad about that until I was a teenager. And then I read an agony aunt post the once, and I was like, wow, this was wrong that happened to me. You know, I just didn't know. Um,
Mhm.
I was a ballerina, and then I started with bulimia, which was all to do with my self-hatred, all to do with what I was trying to purge because I just couldn't cope. I couldn't cope. I had tonsillitis, I had bronchitis growing up, I had ear infections. So my body was what again was what I thought was just the norm. But when I got to teenagehood and I lost my best friend, the beautiful part of the synchronicity of how the universe, my guides, life, or my soul decided was that her last few days were in hospice in Johannesburg. And I
Mm.
remember sitting on the couch and her parents coming from a counseling session. And I remember sitting there distinctively thinking, how is this counselor surrounded by death and she's not crying, she's not sobbing? I remember
Mhm.
looking at her thinking, this doesn't make sense to me. But
Mhm.
the beauty of even just having that time with my friend, you know, she was going through her hallucinogenic stage where she wanted avocados and chicken, which was her favorite meals, but she couldn't eat. She was so tiny and she was on her last few days. Um, the day that she died, I remember still going to school. My mom's like, no, stay at home. And I'm like, no. I remember the call coming from her dad. I remember going to school and just having these out of body experiences, like kind of in a daze, you know. I remember
Right.
people whispering, why is Mich here? Why is Michelle here? This doesn't make sense. Fast forward to being coming into adulthood, I chose men. I was just trying to be loved. I just wanted to be loved because I felt like I wasn't loved by my dad. My dad, he was a very angry alcoholic. He never, ever, ever hit us, but his abuse was through the mouth and the shouting and my mom, I felt never had my back, especially being I can laugh about this today, but I definitely had middle child syndrome. Like
Mm.
definitely. It took me a long time to get over my victimhood of like, hang on, the oldest gets that and the youngest, like my oldest brother, I felt was very, very, very loved by my mother, and my youngest brother was delivered by my father into this world.
Mhm.
And there's been such karma that's played itself out with the two of them. But there was a lot of anger, Julie, so much
Mhm.
anger. And as much as I didn't like the anger, I became angry myself. So I was seeking love by guys with men. And one thing I know for my truth as somebody who was sexually abused is we either become and excuse my language, a cock tease, you know, the nun, like, look at me. And I used to go clubbing and I'd be like, or you become the opposite where people just unfortunately lose themselves, you know. And I've seen this so many times when I started counseling that we just don't know until we know.
Mhm.
And when I say lose themselves, where women just lose themselves in men, I never became sexually active until I was much older, but I most certainly was the tease. And I'm very fortunate that nothing happened to me as an adult. But I do know that a lot of my clients lost themselves at 14, 15, 16 because of being sexually abused when they were younger. And, you know, we play these patterns out without even knowing. And there's so many emotions. The biggest is shame when it comes to being abused. Like, why didn't I know at the age of 5? So,
Which, of course, you didn't. I mean,
no.
you know, as an yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I only knew this when my daughter turned 5, you know, when I got married. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I was so little. Of course I wouldn't have known that. But that critical voice, which I'm still working with every now and again of going, oh my gosh, of course I wouldn't. But because of the conditions, as you were mentioning earlier on. Um, so I was a sales rep for many years, and the one day I was driving in broad daylight, and I looked down to put a straw into a cool drink, and a young girl rushed across the road, which I didn't see, and I was in farm territory, and I collided with her, and I took her life.
Oh, wow.
And I was so disassociated, and I didn't know. I didn't know if it was. I just saw my car smoking, my windscreen was shattered, and I was like, have I hit a horse? Have I hit a cow? You know, and 4 people stopped across the road. and they went to go look because her body rolled into the bushes. Now, at the time, the story was just so different to what I'm expressing and explaining right now, that it was just weird because my ex-boyfriend came to the scene of the accident. I remember standing against my car. The police had come, and I remember watching a man that had taken her umbrella and a jersey, a jumper. And I remember the jersey being like many different multicolors. And I remember standing against my car at one time, and they'd given me sugar water. And I remember thinking, how has a man just taken clothes off a dead person's body? I remember thinking that so distinctively
Hmm.
because the people that had stopped had said, you've killed somebody. And I was like, I don't know what you mean. What are you saying? And I didn't have the courage to go and look. I was just in complete numbness and shock and so
Oh, of course.
disassociated from my
Yeah.
body. And my ex-boyfriend came, and he still, for many, many years, was adamant that it was a grown woman. But about 2 months after the accident, the girl's mother called me. She got my number off the accident report. And this is what is so beautiful about learning forgiveness, but overall being compassion, because I think it's one thing being compassionate, but it's another being compassion and holding compassion. But the mom's mother was Mary. The mom's name was Mary, and she phoned to find out how I was doing.
Wow.
But I was shocked again because I first thought it was somebody playing a prank on me when she said to me she was 14, and I'm like, what do you mean? Excuse me, not that it makes a difference that I had knocked over and killed somebody in terms of ages, but my ex-boyfriend, I phoned and I shouted at him. I'm like, you said this was a woman in her 60s or 70s, and he's like, it was. But what had actually happened was this young girl was a really big girl, and the mom had said that she was knocked over at the age of 7. And then at 14, she didn't have a lot of street understanding, according to
Mm,
the mom.
mm,
But I was clearly devastated because it was like, I've taken a young girl's life, like, woof, and it took me years and years and years. I still have moments where I share this story where I can feel my heart like going, woof, it's big. And it
yeah.
is big, and I'd shared this once before in a podcast, and what blew my mind was when I read the comments that 2 people had said, oh, let me guess, she's South African, and oh, Michelle's white, and it was a black girl. And I was like, really? This is what you took out of the story? Um,
I am so sorry. That, like, brings tears to my eyes because when I've shared my story, sometimes people have made very insensitive comments. And I'm so sorry for that because that I can feel that. I can feel the impact of statements like that. We need to be responsible with our words.
yeah. It floored me. I was like, wow, out of everything,
Ah,
this is what you've seen, is that I'm South African, so yes, let's just make this.
wow.
It's like, wow, okay. And then another person, I was acquitted because I realized that I'd always forgot to share this. It was this grey cloud that hung over my head. That year, though, that this happened, what was quite profound was I was in a very bad relationship. It was a guy that I was in love with for most of my life. His brother and I were best friends, and I grew up with his brother, and I just chose the wrong brother. One of those moments, like when you look back, you're like, what were you thinking? I went for the stereotypical good-looking guy, and anyway, he was violent, um, and I was in a very abusive relationship. We built a house together, and this all happened in 6 months. Within 6 months, I had moved out of the home. I knew that I had to get out. 2 months later, I was made redundant, even though I was headhunted by this company. And so that was October, and December the 15th, 1998, I knocked home and killed this young girl. Now, I like to share this because it just shows you how deeply traumatized I was, with
Mhm.
no understanding of how um, wounded I was, not only based on my past. I had no idea that my past was affecting me in that moment. Um, and 10 days after the accident, I met my ex-husband on Christmas Day, and he felt hugely in love with me, and I was just looking for my knight in shining armor. Like, I just needed to escape. I needed to escape my life. I needed to run. I needed to hide. I was fight, flight, fright, fawn, all of the above. And there was my knight in shining armor. 2 months later, I was engaged. 8 months later, I was married. My first wedding, it looked like I was in the medieval times. If I look at my photos, it was nothing like I visualized. I wore lace. My hair was just, it was like, what was I thinking? I was blotchy on the day that I got married. So I know that there were so many signs to that. When I look at the photos and I'm signing the documents, and, when the skin's blotchy, it's my nervous system. I wasn't my happiest of happy. The day that we got married in Cape Town, Table Mountains in the background, but let me tell you, the skies are so grey and black. Like, it's just like, the universe is going, what are you thinking, woman? Like, you're getting married in winter. Nothing that I wanted. Nothing. But the best thing that happened for me was that my ex-husband had an affair. Now, my grandfather had affairs, my mom's dad. My dad had had an affair. He claims one. I feel like there was two in that. There was another one. It was more emotional when my mom was older. And I was the one that decided I wasn't going to stay. And our little girl at the time, she was 14, 15 months old, and there was a backwards and forwards between London and South Africa. My mom kept saying he's having an affair, but he wouldn't admit it. A year and a half later, I'd taken him back 3 times, and a year and a half later, I eventually got involved with the guy. I'm like, I just need to be loved, and I just need to be held. And it was the best thing once again, not at the time, because my parents couldn't stand this guy and they wanted me to get back together with my ex-husband.
Oh, wow.
My parents were very conditional with their love. And fast forward, we were going through divorce, and I went to go see a clairvoyant. And this young guy, all I remember was him saying to me, you just don't know how to love yourself. That's the statement that I took out of an hour and a half with him. And I remember thinking, like Ellie McBeal, I just want to throat punch you, like, just help me with my anger. I was angry. I had so much hatred inside of me towards men. So at the age of 32, 33, this is when this whole change started to happen for me. Where I went, I don't understand. And my body was showing me. I mean, I was bleeding profusely. Like I say, I also want to say to my ex-husband, thank you, because bless him for taking on this deeply traumatized woman, who was, what I know, was deeply depressed. But depression wasn't a thing that we named and claimed in our era. It was suggested I go for counseling. I went to a psychiatrist. I always get confused because a psychiatrist gives medication. And I remember sitting in front of her saying, please don't give me meds, because my grandmother was addicted to medicine. She said, I'm going to give you 2 antidepressants. One's going to make your breast milk because it's for pregnant women, and the other one's probably going to make your stomach run. And something happened, which I didn't realize at the time. I walked out and I took the script and I threw it away. I never realized what courage that took at the time. And it's not about making me, anybody who's on antidepressants, it's not about making me better than anybody else. There was just something that I just knew that I didn't want to go down that route.
Well, and again, like, you're listening to your own intuition, so it's not about what you did, it's more about the communication that you were receiving and actually doing what connected to that communication. So someone else may have gotten that script and it would have felt correct for them, and so they would have gotten it filled. So, but
Yeah.
you just intuitively felt like this was not the correct route for you.
Yeah, and I had no idea that I even had intuition at the time.
Of
Like, it just
course.
wasn't something that, that I grew up with or knew. Or so my ex-husband played such a pivotal part in my journey of coming to learn not only I sit on the fence with saying gifts or abilities because I feel like we all have them. I just forgot. I just was just like boom, boom. Honestly, I was a bitcher, a moaner. Like if you got me on a call, I was like, blah, 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 like I say, middle child syndrome. I was always whining. I always found something to moan about. And it took me a long time to not only express, and what I mean, sorry, I just hear a child going down the road and we're on a blind corner. To express, but it's interesting. How perfect is that? Because he was screaming like with glee going around the corner. But to express and allow myself to be seen and heard and just allow the tears to not diminish what I'd come through. And that took me a long time. So the ex was very much I want to say like a revelation in my world. But I went to court. I wanted sole custody of my daughter, and my parents were taking his side. And I was like, I don't understand this. I like, how, because they couldn't stand the guy. No, your mother stayed. So, and I'm like, Mom, you haven't dealt with your stuff. Like 40 years later, you haven't dealt with your stuff. I'm fine. And they just had their own way. Alcohol was their coping mechanism. It just was a different time and era for my parents or our parents. And so I got divorced, and then I deep dived. This young man said to me, my mom runs hospice, a division of hospice. Why don't you go away on this weekend? And that weekend was 9 years later after I knocked over this young girl. And I thought I was going to work with my anger, yet what I didn't know at the time is I was going to work with my deep, deep, deep sadness that I suppressed around this incident, this accident. And the facilitator got me to go in, like really go in. And I kept saying, I'm confused. What are we talking about this for? What are we talking about this accident? I'm here for my divorce. I'm here. I need to work through my anger. And she just stayed and she stayed and she stayed with the emotion. She stayed with getting me to go in. And my head was fighting it and she kept saying, your head's fighting. And I'm like, I don't know what you mean. I cried so hard that day, Julie, that it felt like my head split open. They had to put me to bed. I had such a migraine. And I remember these flashes in my body. Like I remember getting hot, cold, which is part of my nervous system, which is part of trying to find a new way of regulating. And that was the absolute, again, the guidance of my spirit team, my soul. This woman had walked a very similar, my facilitator became my counselor. She'd walked a very similar journey, also knocked over and killed a young girl. Also, her ex-husband was having an affair. There were just so many similarities in our journey. But to go back to my church days, I put her on a pedestal. And she kept saying, stop putting me on a pedestal. But I learned through so much of what she shared about energy, about the universe, which I didn't understand. I had the Wade Dyer CDs and the Louise Hay CDs. And they taught me so much. Abraham taught me so much. But the biggest part for me, what my learning has been, is learning to forgive myself being 5 years old and not knowing. Learning to forgive myself when I was a ballerina, having bulimia. Learning to forgive myself for not knowing what I thought I should know. Learning to forgive others along the way. So it was, as we would say, very much written in the stars. And then I just deep dived into studying neuro-linguistic programming, doing yoga teacher training. And I sobbed, and having to not berate myself for letting the tears come, letting the tears go. I smile because my NLP coach drove it. This guy tried every technique in the book. Eventually, she's like, I don't know what to do with you. You just cry. I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself. This guy had 18 years of experience as a coach. He's like, I just don't know. And I feel like that I was just picking up on energy. When I look back on myself and the journey, It was all on point. It was never wrong or right, but I had to let go of the wrong or the right, and let go of the whining voice, let go of the way I was conditioned, let go of wishing I had different parents. I
Mm.
really did. I wished I had different parents because I'm like, I don't understand this, but forgiving my dad for being an alcoholic. His dad was an alcoholic. Forgiving my mom for being an angry drunk. Forgiving from my mom for wishing that, the grieving still happens every now and again, wishing that we had a different relationship, which happened when she got dementia. She
Mm.
then started to tell me she loved me. So there's all these little points, but these massive big moments of grieving. And then I started counseling. I started becoming a part-time hospice caregiver. And it just blew me away when I didn't join the dots. I feel like our life is such a puzzle. And only when I look back and I go, oh my gosh, 16, of course. And when you learn to, being a hospice caregiver, you learn to step into somebody else's shoes, but then you've got to step back into your own. So what
Mm.
we learned was we'd, rub our shoes before we went in, like energetically, rub your feet, rub your shoes, go into the home, be there with the family, with the person who's the patient. But when you leave, you step back into yourself again. And, kind of, it was always something that I remember, like wipe your feet again and then get on with your life because you're not there anymore. So symbolically, I think even learning to be back in the now, come back to your now. And I don't always get it right, but this is where just I started to advance. And my first client, I started to see a little baby girl. And she's like, how do you know this? I was counseling her and I described this little baby girl to a T in her arms. And she said, Mish, I had a stillborn in what you're describing. And that was being a medium or a psychic. It happened to other people. It wasn't me.
Mhm.
So this is where the development happened. And it was like when I was going through my divorce, I always remember saying to friends, it's like I felt like a pit bull had grabbed me by my Achilles heel and something brought me down. Something brought me down to go, okay, now it's time to regrow. Now it's time to really go within. And my learning has been to just let go of the patterns, the ancestral, the deeply intergenerational wounds, and trauma that has been held on, that, that my grandmother, what she went through, my mom, what she went through, and just learning to show up as best as I can in a
Mm.
space of holding space or compassion. And I don't always get it right. Um, I don't feel like it's even right to even say that, to even, because it
Right.
kind of, like you say, it's our words, our words. And sometimes I do. I have a Joburg part in me that just is feisty. And I call it the Joburg part because she rears her head every now and again. I'm like, oh, there it is. But I grew up in survival, not knowing any different.
Well, and it really feels like as you share your story, it really and this is somewhat of a tired phrase, but it really feels like you're a chain breaker, but then also, do we wanna carry that type of, a label or a role? Because in reality, we're all just, being who we are,
Yeah,
but you're here at a specific time, taking on a particular role, creating a new energy within your sphere of influence, within your family, and you're taking advantage of an opportunity to not only transform yourself, but transform your lineage in many ways. And I feel like that goes backward and forward.
yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel like it moves in all directions, and it really makes a difference for all of us.
Very much so. And I love what you shared because I took that on like a badge of honor. When my first counselor had said to me, Mish, you're the change bringer in your family, I was like, well, of course I am. And my ego was just going blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and this is again what I've seen when when people, like, I don't like using the term, "This was the time that I awakened," because it's like, what does that even mean? That creates such separation, I believe, for so many people. Well, I'm awakened and they're not. And I always say, well, they're in their space that they're in. They're on their journey that they're on.
Mhm.
And who are we to try and force it or make it different? And again, when I was speaking about being a victim, my biggest thing was, have you ever done the victim triangle or looked into the victim triangle, where it's the rescue, the persecutor, and the victim?
I'm a little familiar with it, but not
Okay.
completely,
It's a
yeah.
beautiful exercise because it's very much based around fear, but also very much based around how we bully ourselves. And when we're bullying ourselves, we're looking to rescue. We're seeking someone, and the universe brings in somebody perfectly. Like, oh, okay, let's rescue this. So it takes us outside of ourselves. But then we go into the victim because the rescuer didn't do what we wanted them to do. And then we start bullying ourselves, or we start bullying somebody else. And it's just this role that we play, or the roles that we can play or negotiate with ourselves. Um, so most certainly, it came with a lot of, for me, like my dad used to mock me, "You and your universe, you and your feelings, you're so sensitive. Why are you so sensitive?" And I didn't know what to do with that. So, in one breath, I was so happy to go, my gosh, I'm being in service. But what I forgot was to be in service to myself.
Mm.
Yeah,
So
helping,
when did
helping, helping, helping.
so when did you step into the role of spiritual medium, the healer work that you do now? And I would love to hear your definition of a spiritual medium. I have my own. What that means to you, and the work that you do now, because I know you offer a lot of different things within the work that you do. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about, like, stepping into that piece from all of this. You did all this healing work, which is so beautiful. And what's so beautiful about that is that oh, actually what I'm seeing right now is, like, you chose all of those challenges so that you could work through the healing of those challenges, so you could bring that healing to others. It just,
Mhm.
like, it's so beautiful. It just brings tears to my eyes. Yeah. It's very brave, very courageous.
Thank you. And I truly feel like we all have it. And so for me, I didn't know what to label myself, like I do speak truthfully a lot of the time. And even in yoga teacher training, I pick up on somebody's energy and I'm like, blah, blah, blah. I have had to learn discernment. Um, and when to say things and when to ask permission, because that was when I look back, even being a little girl. So to answer your question, I didn't know that I was a counselor. And then from that evolved, and labeling myself a spiritual medium, and what that means is, when I sat in meditation, I would hear spirit all. And I feel like that's who we are as human beings. Like, if we just look at it as our organs, if we look at it as just the connectivity of our bodies, our hearts, um, connecting into every part of our body, but our spine is connecting into every part of our body, but every single cell is different. So for me, a medium is the bridge. Like, I like to believe that I help the bridge with humans, with my clients, of, you know, I connect into the unconscious, the subconscious of the vibration. Like, as an example, if somebody says, "No, I don't like getting angry. I'm never angry," but the liver energy is going, and so it's it's taken a long time, to be honest, where I'm like, "Oh, I played this. Oh my God, I've studied this course. Now I'm going to do this." And I have. I've done different courses. Some people are just so natural at being a medium or being psychic. I never thought of myself like that. Um, Mine's just been kind of this role of going, okay, one foot in front of the next, one foot in front of the next. And when we came to New Zealand, which was 10 years ago, I fell to pieces. So I'd done quite a lot of work, emotional work, spiritual work, mental, physical. And then New Zealand just brought me to my knees. I went into a big depression, but I knew what to do on some level. Like I'd say to my children, Mom's just sad, I'm okay, but I'm sad. I would get up every day. I would brush my hair, brush my teeth. For some reason, I've never been one. I wish that I would have just pulled the duvet over my head and just gone, let the world out there. I don't know how come. I just keep going. And it's been sometimes to my detriment. And that's what happened. I started to do body work again. I started to counsel, just to develop my confidence. And it's probably been the hardest thing to be a label of some sorts, because I feel like we all evolve at certain times of our lives. So my husband gets so mad because he's my tech guy. He's like, oh my God, we're labeling you. What now? And I'm like, well, now I'm connecting telepathically. So can we just put that? He's like, oh my God, Michelle, just focus. And I'm like, I don't know what it means.
I always say the minute you update your website, it needs to be updated again. At least that's been my experience with my own website. I was actually doing that today. So
Exactly.
I can really appreciate that. It's very challenging.
Yes.
For some of us. I think some people are able to really focus in on a particular thing, but there are some of us that we just have this energy where uh, we have this wide curiosity and this wide desire to serve and help, and so we tend to be yeah, we tend to struggle a little bit with with the labels that help people find us, and oh, this is what you
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. So what's your version? What's your understanding of a spiritual medium, Julie?
Well, I call myself a spiritual medium because I wasn't completely comfortable with psychic medium
Yeah.
because really the work that I do is connecting with uh, people with their loved ones and with their spirit guides and their angels and their spirit team. So, um, I feel like, and I read energy and that kind of thing. So for me, uh, I don't necessarily, I guess I am doing that, but I don't necessarily resonate with the whole psychic thing as much as I am just tuning into the energy and tuning into the spirit field. So
Yes.
that's where mine's coming from, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, I also know you channel. How did that come about?
So when I was first being counseled many years ago, by what I call my first teacher, she'd be writing things on the board and I'd be watching her, but I'd hear these other voices. And again, I didn't think that they belonged to me. I thought maybe I'm going crazy. No, this is not real. Focus, Michelle, focus on the
Mm,
board. um, and, uh, and when I came to New Zealand, like I shared with you, I had to relearn again and I want to say evolve. Like there's these, it's kind of like putting on a heavy coat, because everything that I knew in South Africa, everything that I loved, everything that I cherished, family, my culture, was now different. Even though I live in an English speaking country, it's different. And so I started to meditate. I would sit in my therapy room, and then it's almost like it happened organically, where I started seeing clients. I've got a massage table, and immediately I started doing like these figure eights, and then I'd hear, Michelle, you need to start using music in your mediumship. Like often I'll wake up sometimes and I have a song playing, or I'll go for a walk and I have a song playing. 2 days before, 3 days before, a client, I'm seeing a client, and then I realize that the song was for, 'cause spirit are in the now. Um,
mhm.
So they started telling me, and I didn't know this at the time, who they were, start singing in your sessions. I'm like, I'm a shower singer. Like, I would love to be like Lady Gaga, but I'm a shower singer, but somewhere inside of me, I knew I could sing. Like, I don't know how, but I just knew. And so I started playing music and I started humming and again doing these eights. And the one thing that's been consistent is my clients have gone, gosh, I feel lighter. Mish, my hands are always freezing cold when I'm in a different space. And I have, again, for me, believed a theory of healers always have warm hands. And
Mm.
people would look at me and they, Mish, why are your hands so freezing cold? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. And I started to, in meditation, I started to start to quiver. And I started to get really, really cold. And I didn't understand what was going on, but I say, who are you guys? Like, what, like, I hear voices. Am I going mad? Who are you? And then I heard counsel. And then in my head, I was like, okay, so you guys, you sit at a table. And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, well, who are you? We're the Council of Eight. I'm like, okay, well, what does that even mean? And slowly but surely, I started to hear them more clearer. And they would say to me, take your time, close your eyes. We're always with you, but breathe, just breathe. Because again, my nervous system would go like this.
Mhm.
And I say, okay, all right. Okay, well, who are you? I said, you have to give me something so I can explain who you guys are. And the way they phrased themselves were angelic beings of light, ascended masters who've once walked the earth's plains. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means. And I was very fortunate to study another modality, and I brought this wonderful gentleman, a British healer, into my space, and he helped me start to articulate what I was sensing and seeing. We would go into meditation together, and then he would just say to me, just look out the window. What do you see? What are you sensing? And then I came to discover that in the eight, that they're a collective of masters. And the collective of masters are Lady Diana, Mother Mary, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Babaji, Yogananda, but they aren't specific. They never, ever, ever, because I've had clients will say, oh, well, I hear they're in this collective, can I speak to so-and-so? And the Council of Eight would always say, we're all and we're nothing. We're within, we're without. And they've helped me with the singing to start to open up my throat more, which is quite profound considering that as a young girl and as an adult and as a young teenager that I had to develop, I had to open up here, which
Mhm.
interesting enough has been very connected to, the root for me is very connected to the throat, the root chakra or the energy center. And a lot of us as women, I say us, but those of us who have been through some cycle of abuse. So this started to open, and I started to have these frequencies come through and these notes, and I was like, oh my God, I'm an opera singer. Like, it was just phenomenal how
Wow.
they've just helped me. But it's almost like I had to shed, Julie, and shed this heavy armor that didn't sit well with me anymore. And so that's how they describe themselves. And they're not one, they're a collective of energies, and they're jovial, but they speak truthfully. They speak very truthfully. And what I mean by that is they speak in the now. As an example, I had a client where she was, asking them questions, and I remember this because I don't remember, but she reminded me on an email because she was so upset. And she said, Mish, I thought these angels were full of love. And I said, well, what did they say? I'm like, oh my God, what did they say? And what happened was they never, ever, ever, ever share about the fear, but they see us in our light. So it's
Mhm.
like they shed that heavy coat, they shed the fear. And what was happening was she was repeating a story, the continuous story that she was kind of stuck in. And they said to her, blah, 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 blah. And she
Mhm.
stopped. And then they said to her, do you know who you are? And she said, no. And they said, well, we see you. We see you in the essence of who you are, yet you are addicted to your story. You are addicted to that timeline. And in our exchange of emails, and this was a woman in her 70s, I was so in awe of how she then said, okay, I need to start doing the inner work.
Oh, wow.
And that's how they speak truthfully. That's just one small example of how they kind of stop us in our tracks to say, no, this is not who you are. You're just here for now. But how can we help you go from here to here? How
Mhm.
can we help you see who you truly are in your, they will share about our cells are our soul. It's us. If you think of how we have trillions of cells, and the liver cells do what the liver needs to do. The heart does what the heart needs to do. And that's what I love is just, it's kind of like they open up, but they help to shed at the same time. And it's, sometimes I kind of cringe and I'm like, what are they going to say now? But it helps
I
us
can
to.
I can really appreciate that because, yeah, especially when I first began channeling, my consciousness would be in the background listening, going, "Should you be saying that? Should you be saying that that way?" It was like I was in the background kind of going, "Wait a second." So I can really appreciate that. What is your process for going into channel, and are you willing to channel for us today?
I'd love to. And my process is just closing my eyes and taking a few breaths. And I always say to them, are you ready? In my mind. And they're like, "Oh, well, of course we're here." And we just have such a playful, jovial way of how we connect. But I just go in, and then I can already feel, it's my right brain kind of goes woof out there.
Mhm.
And I would love to bring them through and see what they have to share. So it just takes a few, I want to say like a minute or so for me to just not be me, and I step aside.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, it is our absolute delight to be here with you today. And we say to you that as we are here and the world is speeding up, and we say to you that it is interesting, 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 it is interesting. And as we are bringing through forth this time where time collectively is nothing, time is collapsing, yet the energy, the frequency of humans are taking a pause, beloved. And we are sharing in the now of what we see for humanity. And we are so delighted that we are collectively in, that is it, in your humanness, in the change. And we feel that it is necessary to say to you, beloved, it is time for acknowledgement. And we acknowledge you in your space of grace, in your space of knowing, in your truth of who you are. So do you see how energy is? Energy is energy. It changes, it transforms, and it is important, as we see it, for humans to know that energy is many different moments of time. So yes, as humans are saying to oneself, it is interesting, 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 and yet in the time of being interested, will we say, what are you focusing on?
Mm.
A focus point is a point of time, a point of reference. And as we hang out and wait, and we watch and observe and witness the delightful conversation between the exchange of energies between yourself and this one, we say thank you for being you. We say thank you for having the desire to share fun and joy. Yet in the joy, there is an energy, there is a space, there is an openness of connection. And we say, that as the beings of light that we are, as the ascended masters, yet you are a master too, are you not?
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Every human in our space of recognition is a master. A master of this or a master of that, or a master of this or a master of that, or a master of this or a master of that. And these are the particles, these are the parts of you that you are re-engaging with. Many of you, may we say. Yet humans love, 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 love. The drama of time.
Mm.
And notice how we are holding here right now. Time has no relevance from where we are. And time is speeding up. It is quicker than many of you are blinking. Yet there is a slowing down that is happening within your particles, within your heart's knowing. So as humans are learning that in the stillness of time, in the stillness of walking, in the stillness of nature, everything is free-flowing. Everything is free. Yet we know that as you exist within this wonderful playground, which you call Earth, it is delightful. It is a time for delight. It is a time for connection. It is a time for humans to reconnect with self. We hope this makes sense.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
We thank
What
you.
is it okay if I ask you some
Please
questions?
go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Um, what in your viewpoint is the purpose of us being here and forgetting who we are in spirit form?
To be your multidimensional selves.
Mm.
Many of you are learning this. It is a knowing, it is a truth. Yet many are focusing, 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 focusing. Does this look like focus? And the refocus is coming back into you. Many talk of unity, many talk of the universe, and we say, well, everything is. A leaf doesn't ask permission how to grow on a tree, it just does.
Mm.
The roots of a tree grow in, and then there is connection. So where we are going with this is we are saying to you that everything is within. Yet in the learning of the mastery of who you are within is bringing the sense of calm. This is the purpose as we see you humans being here on earth, is to collectively bring change. Yet in the union, this is the union, is it not, beloved?
Mm.
Mm-hmm. And then there is a unity where you say, wow, whew, wow, in the exchange of stories. And the exchange of stories is exactly as we are showing you right now. It is a dance as you exchange stories. And then as the beautiful tears fall, is it not miraculous that as the tears fall, they go right to the heart center if you allow them? So this is being in purpose. This is purposeful. Sharing, opening, seeing, sensing is all to do with purpose, is it not?
Mm.
Have we answered your question?
Thank you. Yes. So, what place does technology have in our day today as we progress forward?
This is part of the as we came through. It is part of how things are speeding up, progressively speeding up, and many of you, may we say, are intertwined with this technology, yet many of you are saying to self, well, what do we focus on? Everything is a tool, is it not, beloved?
Mm.
So as you reference the tools of change, as you reference the tools of How do we say this? A toolbox. This is the easiest version and the simple way of describing. When one is underneath a car, when one is wanting to fix a leak underneath the car and the oil is coming out, this is the technology of today. It is murky. It is sticky. It is distracting. And it is holding many of you to ransom. Not good, not bad. So we say to you, we say to many who are here right now, in the learning of becoming distracted, what brings change within? So if you were under the car and you were letting the oil come out, and then you put fresh oil in, which is golden, technology is just this. It is how you perceive it to be. Yet many are distracted. Many are holding themselves back. Yet at the same time, it is also as you are putting in fresh oil. You meet new fresh clients. You meet new fresh people. It is fresh, is it not? It is a newness of energy. And the car is very symbolic. It would not go if there was a leak. There is much truth that is coming to the forefront of technology. Many of you have been told, protect the waters, and the waters are saying, do you know how long we have existed before you humans came into fruition, into point, into existence? Technology does not take over. Humans think they are being taken over. So when one is being held, we say, let go of the shackles. We say, focus on what brings change. And many, 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 including yourself, and we say, thank you, thank you, thank you for bringing the change, for sharing, for expressing. If it was not for technology, if it was for technology, if it was not for technology, if it was for technology, everything is coming into existence. It is up to you as to how you reference it. It is up to you as to what you do with it. Are you wanting this or are you wanting this? Are we making sense?
Yes, beautiful. How does
Exactly.
how does one person's awakening affect society or their family or their community?
In the most boldest and courageous of times, it is a ripple effect. It is interesting as we see that every now and again there is one specific human that brings change. Good or bad, negative or positive, depends how you choose to perceive that person, that individual at that time. So each individual, as they are bringing change to themselves, which is soul, which is cell, the light shines brighter. And as the light shines brighter, there is most certainly the ripple effect. Think of the whales and how the whales are showing themselves to many of you humans. It is now a ripple effect. And as you are bringing the change of vibration, resonance to yourself, this creates harmony across many, 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 many generations. Next question, please.
What last words of wisdom and encouragement do you have for us?
Many humans are redefining who they are. Many humans are wondering, questioning what truly is love, this one included. One day she says to herself when she looks in the mirror, I love you, you're great. And then the next moment, there is a uncertainty. Think of it as a discoloration. And then there is a retuning, a redefining, a re-looking into the mirror, the version of self. So we say to humans, we say to those that are here right now, as there is only now, the existence of now, and the existence of now, and the existence of now, and the existence of now. Laugh more. And as you find yourself laughing more, laugh at yourself more. As this is where the truth truly lies. To love. To being love. To seeing love. As this one is described, and as you are well aware, beloved, joy, love, compassion truly is. It is not. It is. If you do not like our voice, if we said to you today that this is, you would say, wow. Whew. So we say to you, it's in, and you are well aware. You are well versed in your beloved connection to being. And as your beings, as your truth speakers, as your ascended masters, and we're saying yours, and many are going to hear right now and say, interesting, she has those, and this one has this, and this one has that, and that one has that. It is not that time to truthfully create the separation. So being in your space of love, being in your space of communication, as communication is key, is it not? And as you are decompressing many timelines that do not serve humanity no longer, we say love, we say compassion, we say laughter. All. The birds sing easily. They gift to you humans. Every day, the sun gifts you humans its beautiful rays. The moon gifts you humans. The waters gifts you humans. And as you learn that everything, your breath, is a gift, every breath is gifting. This is all that matters in the space of love. We say thank you. We know you. We love you. Namaste, beloved. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you.
How did that go?
Really good. How do you feel?
A little bit spacey. How do you bring yourself back? Like, I can be very giddy, like, so sometimes it's a good thing to just end. How do you bring yourself?
Do you remember when you channel? Do you have a conscious awareness?
No. If you had to share one or two things with me, then I'd be like, oh, okay, yep. But there's the one time I heard that somebody said, oh, you're a clear channel, and I was like, I don't know what that means. But no, do you remember when you channeled, Julie?
I do, but it's kind of spacey.
Yeah.
I do, but I don't. It's
Gotcha.
kind of at a distance, but I do. I will remember like little pieces. Sometimes when they bring through something that's so new and so, sometimes it will like kind of shock my consciousness enough that I'll remember.
Oh, I love that, because often I in the moment I'm like, wow, that's brilliant, guys. I can hear myself going, that's brilliant.
That's
Wow, I'm gonna
right.
remember.
Right? Yeah. So
Wow.
occasionally I'll remember pieces like that, but usually it's the going back and re-listening to it that really brings it,
Yeah,
obviously,
for
to
me
my
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. for being here today and sharing everything with us. I have a couple more questions, and one is there something else that we haven't talked about that you would love to share with us? And then also, what are some of your practices, spiritual practices that you do to stay connected?
Oh, I love that. So I'll start with the practices. For me, it's as simple as having my cup of coffee in the morning and having my 10, 15 minutes to myself, thanking my coffee, breathing into the coffee, breathing, smelling it, thanking my body. Um, because we're in winter at the moment, I walk outside and it's always so amazing how the birds know when to start because the sun's coming up, and I thank the birds, I thank the trees. I just breathe in life. Whether I've had a good night's sleep or not a good night's sleep, it's really just looking at going into a space of gratitude for me. And it's throughout the day, because sometimes something might happen that might be a bit of a shock to my system, or something where there's a negative thought, or I have taught myself to hum a lot, because I did not know that for many years that I do have PTSD.
Mm,
We were affected many times by situations in South Africa. And then a friend here in New Zealand suggested it to me, and I'm like, what? Me? No.
mm.
And then I looked into it, I'm like, okay, yep, I'm typical. I know that. So my practice is to learn to regulate my nervous system. So I hum a lot, I really do. In between sessions, I dance, I put music on. I really, really find that center of joy. But at the same time, I'm always, as best as I can, navigating my nervous system. So I just talk about contraction and expansion. So if my husband says something that annoys me, I, I feel into my body, okay, there's a little bit of something there. I don't overanalyze it like I used to. But that's my practice daily. Hugging my husband, thanking him, hugging my children, thanking them, having a moment with my cat, just thanking my computer. When I'm finished in my room for the day, I thank my computer. Thank you for all the connection it's brought. If I have in-person clients, I thank my room, I thank the bed. And it's not woo-woo, it's truly because everything was a thought. And I just think it's miraculous that we can sit on this connection. You're in one part of the world and I'm in another. And somebody decided that let's bring a Zoom together. This is just, for me, nothing short of looking at the small miracles. And then I walk after my day. I go for a walk by myself. I love, we have uh, winter. So again, it's fresh. And I just thank my lungs, especially being sick. As I mentioned to you, I was sick last week in bed. It's one of the hardest things for me is to surrender into that, because I keep thinking I've got to do this and I've got to do that. So learning to come back into the now and thanking my body, because when I'm sick, it's the one thing I realize, like, wow, nothing else matters except being healthy
Mhm.
and loving my body for knowing how to heal.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So
Beautiful.
there might be a lot in that, but the one thing I'd love to offer is humming. Humming's very good for anybody who has anxiety, who is perhaps going through something. Grieving is a big part of our healing. It has most certainly been mine. Yeah.
That makes
And
a
I
lot
honor
of
it.
sense. That makes a lot of sense. Where can people find you and the wonderful work that you're doing?
I have a website, and it's www.mishcarpenter, michcarpenter.com, and there's various options on there. And I'm always of the opinion, feel into, um, you get a feeling, like for me, you get a feeling about someone, and they might get a feeling about, like, oh, who do I, what do I want to book in for? And I go, because I'm not for everybody, Julie. I know that I'm not, because I can be very bluntly truthful. And that is whether it's wrong or right, I don't know. I'm still learning.
Mm.
But I just see people, and I feel like it's like, come on, there's a little, there's a version of yourself that's there, and I can hear it, I can feel it, you
Mm.
know. But yeah, I'm very honored for anybody that um, chooses me as, whether it be my mediumship or channeling or energy work or telepathic communicating. I always feel incredibly honored, because I feel like it's just, it's like, wow, there's so many people out there, you know, that can help. So anybody that says, hey, yeah, you're the person, I go, wow, I'm very grateful. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. It's been truly an honor and a pleasure to hear your story and your experiences and experience your channeling as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all that you do in our world. And thank you for bringing us into, um, this wonderful world that we live in. Because again, I said this to you before we recorded, you have such, I wish I could have Judy in my pocket, because you're just so calm. You're so calm. And I'm like, oh my God, is this ever can I ever? So thank you for being you, and yeah, just holding this beautiful space together. I'm
Well, I
very,
appreciate
very
that.
grateful. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.